to start with a disclaimer. Normally when I agree to give a talk, I have read a book or some interesting issue that I feel is worthwhile presenting. But when Charity sent out this email that she needed somebody to fill in, I didn't have a talk, but I just happened to stumble upon a talk that the Pope gave to the TED audience. For those of you who may not know what TED is, it stands for Technology, Entertainment, and Discoveries. So it's an organization that offers people that have something to present. It's a very restrictive format. They have only 18 minutes, but they are usually people who are very passionate about the topic, and it fits under those broad topics. The audience is typically, fairly open-minded, maybe a little bit on the intellectual side, and they're willing to pay a ticket for an event like that when they go there. But also these TED Talks are now on the internet, and you can find them there. So I was surprised that the Pope would address an audience like that. That, in my prejudice, thought Pope is, on the top of the Catholic hierarchy, and he basically talks to a somewhat conservative religious audience. And so I was kind of just curious, what would he say to a TED audience? So that was one of the reasons. I thought I'd give a little bit more of my own background and what I feel about Catholicism, and then I talk a little bit about the Pope's background, and then end up with his talk. So that's my plan for today. I grew up Lutheran in Germany. I had a lot of Catholic friends, and I remember sometimes I was envious because they could always confess, and then they could sin again, while we as Lutherans, it was just between us and God. We didn't have this priesthood that was the intermediary. But then, of course, not much more than 300 years ago, the Catholic Church forced Galileo Galilei to recant his insight that the Earth revolves around the sun, and such oppressive type of behavior, of course, I could not subscribe to, and there's probably no hope that I could ever be a happy Catholic. So anyway, my own journey has led me to leave Lutheranism behind too, and now I consider myself more of a humanist. I believe in the fact that people can do good things and improve the world that we live in, rather than worry about a questionable afterlife. So in that sense, I go along with the song that we just heard. Why would I listen to the Pope's talk? I also wanted to fight my own confirmation bias. When we talk about confirmation bias, that's the tendency of people to only listen to things that reinforce their own beliefs. And so sometimes I feel it's important to also intentionally listen to the other side, so to speak. And so that was kind of the motivation I had when I listened to the Pope talk. I have to say I was very surprised, first of all, of course, that he addressed the TED community, and also that he in his talk really addressed the whole world and specifically picked out leaders of the world. So, and there were lots of other things that I could really identify my own belief system with, and I'll let you judge your own how much you can follow some of his thoughts when you hear his talk. So let me go on to just talk a little bit about his background. His official biography lists a lot of his positions he held in the Catholic hierarchy. I don't want to bore you with a lot of the details there. He was a Jesuit priest and a professor at the Catholic University, and ended up being the Archbishop of in Buenos Aires in Argentina. But anyway, I want to rather tell you some things that highlight him as a human being rather than his career path. Born as Jorge Mario Bergoglio in Buenos Aires, Argentina, on December 17, 1936. He was the eldest of a family of 5 children to an Italian immigrant family. As a teen, he spent time sweeping floors and running tests in a chemical lab. As a young man, George Mario studied chemistry, philosophy, and theology, and worked as a bouncer in a nightclub. He also owned a Harley-Davidson motorcycle and had a girlfriend with whom he liked to tango before he decided to pursue his religious career. After he became Pope, the bike maker donated one of their motorcycles to him. The Holy Hog was later auctioned off and fetched some 240,000 euros. It is not known whether the Pope took his cycle for a spin, but he is better known for flying economy class, riding through Buenos Aires on a bus, and scooting through Rome's narrow laneways in a modest Ford Focus. He even hopped in a minivan with the other cardinals after he was elected Pope, rather than take the special sedan organized for him. And some other tidbits. He's a passionate supporter of the San Lorenzo Soccer Club. And they sent him a letter, of course, once he was elected Pope. They were very thrilled that they had such a high level supporter. And miraculously, they won the soccer championship that year, so whatever. He's known to take selfies with visiting youth inside St. Peter's Basilica, so obviously he's going with the times. And he invited homeless men from the streets in front of the Vatican to his birthday party to come inside and have breakfast with him. He scolds the media for the public image of him as some sort of star or superhero, as depicted in such images as the Superman graffiti, which cropped up around the Vatican earlier this year. The Pope is a man who laughs, cries, sleeps well, and has friends like everyone else. A normal person, he said in an interview with an Italian daily newspaper. After the results of the 2013 papal conclave were announced, US President Barack Obama issued a statement about the new Pope. As the first Pope from the Americas, his selection also speaks to the strength and vitality of a region that is increasingly shaping our world. And alongside millions of Hispanic Americans, those of us in the United States share the joy of this historic day. It was not long after assuming the papacy that Pope Francis began offering more nuanced views and interpretations on key social issues about which the Church holds pronounced doctrinal views. He has not shied away from elaborating on those views, and sound bites such as, "Who am I to judge?" a comment he made referring to homosexuality, have served to portray him as a compassionate conservative whose views are often considered progressive compared to those of his predecessors. In early December 2013, Pope Francis gave an apostolic exhortation, an address calling for changes in the Catholic Church, including rethinking long-held but antiquated customs. "I prefer a church which is bruised, hurting, and dirty because it has been out in the streets, rather than a church which is unhealthy from being confined and from clinging to its own security," he stated. "I do not want a church concerned with being at the center and then ends by being caught up in a web of obsessions and procedures." Pope Francis showed himself to be a progressive on several scientific issues. He told the members of the Pontifical Academy of Sciences that he supported the Big Bang theory and evolution. He said that the Big Bang, which today we hold to be the origin of the world, does not contradict the intervention of the divine creator, but rather requires it. He also said that evolution is not inconsistent with the notion of creation. Okay, which brings me to his talk that was presented in Italian. I don't speak Italian, but I found a transcript of it, so that's what I'll try to reenact here. So, it's the Holy Father. Good evening or good morning. I'm not sure what time it is there. Regardless of the hour, I'm thrilled to be participating in your conference. I'm very much like it's the title, The Future You, because while looking at tomorrow, it invites us to open a dialogue today, to look at the future through a you. The future you. The future is made of yous. It is made of encounters because life flows through our relations with others. Quite a few years of life has strengthened my conviction that each and everyone's existence is deeply tied to that of others. Life is not time merely passing by. Life is about interactions. As I meet or lend an ear to those who are sick, to the migrants who face terrible hardships in search of a brighter future, to prison inmates who carry a hell of pain inside their hearts, and to those, many of them young, who cannot find a job, I often find myself wondering, why them and not me? I myself was born in a family of migrants. My father, my grandparents, like many other Italians, left for Argentina and met the fate of those who are left with nothing. I could have well ended up among today's discarded people. And that's why I ask myself deep in my heart, why them and not me? First and foremost, I would love if this meeting could help to remind us that we all need each other. None of us is an island, an autonomous and independent I, separated from the other. And we can only build a future by standing together, including everyone. We don't think about it often, but everything is connected, and we need to restore our connection to a healthy state. Even the harsh judgment I hold in my heart against my brother or my sister, the open wound that never was cured, the offense that was never forgiven, the rancor that is only going to hurt me, are all instances of a fight that I carry within me. A flare deep in my heart that needs to be extinguished before it goes up in flames, leaving only ashes behind. Many of us nowadays seem to believe that a happy future is something impossible to achieve. While such concerns may be taken very seriously, they are not invincible. They can be overcome when we don't lock our door to the outside world. Happiness can only be discovered as a gift of harmony between the whole and each single component. Even science, and you know it better than I do, points to an understanding of reality as a place where every element connects and interacts with everything else. And this brings me to my second message. How wonderful would it be if the growth of scientific and technological innovation would come along with more equality and social inclusion? How wonderful would it be, while we discover faraway planets, to rediscover the needs of the brothers and sisters orbiting around us? How wonderful would it be if solidarity this beautiful and at times inconvenient word, were not simply reduced to social work and became instead the default attitude in political, economic, and scientific choices, as well as in the relationships among individuals, peoples, and countries. Only by educating people to a true solidarity will we be able to overcome the culture of waste, which doesn't concern only food and goods, but, and foremost, the people who are cast aside by our techno-economic systems, which, without even realizing it, are now putting products at their core instead of people. Solidarity is a term that many wish to erase from the dictionary. Solidarity, however, is not an automatic mechanism. It cannot be programmed or controlled. It is a free response born from the heart of each and everyone. Yes, a free response. When one realizes that life, even in the middle of so many contradictions, is a gift, that love is the source and the meaning of life, how can they withhold their urge to do good to other fellow beings? In order to do good, we need memory, we need courage, and we need creativity. And I know that TED gathers many creative minds. Yes, love does require a creative, concrete, and ingenious attitude. Good intentions and conventional formulas, so often used to appease our conscience, are not enough. Let us help each other, all together, to remember that the other is not a statistic or a number. The other is a face. The you is always a real presence, a person to take care of. There's a parable Jesus told to help us understand the difference between those who'd rather not be bothered and those who take care of the other. I'm sure you've heard of it before. It is a parable of the Good Samaritan. When Jesus was asked, who is my neighbor, namely, who should I take care of, he told this story. The story of a man who had been assaulted, robbed, beaten, and abandoned along a dirt road. Upon seeing him, a priest and a Levite, two very influential people at the time, walked past him without stopping to help. After a while, a Samaritan, a very much despised ethnicity at the time, walked by. Seeing the injured man lying on the ground, he did not ignore him as if he weren't even there. Instead, he felt compassion for this man, which compelled him to act in a very concrete manner. He poured oil and wine on the wounds of the helpless man, brought him to a hostel, and paid out of his pocket for him to be assisted. The story of the Good Samaritan is the story of today's humanity. People's paths are riddled with suffering, as everything is centered around money and things instead of people. And often there's this habit by people who call themselves respectable of not taking care of the others, thus leaving behind thousands of human beings or entire populations on the side of the road. Fortunately, there are also those who are creating a new world by taking care of the other, even out of their own pockets. Mother Teresa actually said, one cannot love unless it is at their own expense. We have so much to do, and we must do it together. But how can we do that with all the evil we breathe every day? Thank God, no system can nullify our desire to open up to the good, to compassion, and to our capacity to react against evil, all of which stem from deep within our hearts. Now you might tell me, sure, these are beautiful words, but I'm not the Good Samaritan, nor Mother Teresa of Calcutta. On the contrary, we are precious, each and every one of us. Each and every one of us is irreplaceable in the eyes of God. Through the darkness of today's conflicts, each and every one of us can become a bright candle, a reminder that light will overcome darkness, and never the other way around. To Christians, the future does have a name, and its name is hope. Feeling hopeful does not mean to be optimistically naive and ignore the tragedy humanity is facing. Hope is the virtue of a heart that doesn't lock itself into darkness, that doesn't dwell on the past, does not simply get by in the present, but is able to see it tomorrow. Hope is the door that opens into the future. Hope is a humble, hidden seed of life that, with time, will develop into a large tree. It's like some invisible yeast that allows the whole dough to grow, that brings flavor to all aspects of life. And it can do so much, because a tiny flicker of light that feeds on hope is enough to shatter the shield of darkness. A single individual is enough for hope to exist. And that individual can be you. And then there will be another you, and another you, and that turns into an us. And so, does hope begin when we have an us? No. Hope begins with one you. When there's an us, there begins a revolution. The third message I would like to share today is indeed about revolution. The revolution of tenderness. What is tenderness? It is the love that comes close and becomes real. It is a movement that starts from our heart and reaches the eyes, the ears, and the hands. Tenderness means to use our eyes to see the other, our ears to hear the other, to listen to the children, the poor, those who are afraid of the future. To listen also to the silent cry of our common home, our sick and polluted earth. Tenderness means to use our hands and our heart to comfort the other, to take care of those in need. Tenderness is the language of the young children, of those who need the other. A child's love for mom and dad grows through their touch, their gaze, their voice, their tenderness. And I like when I hear parents talk to their babies, adapting to the little child, sharing the same level of communication. This is tenderness, being at the same level as the other. God Himself descended into Jesus to be on our level. This is the same path the Good Samaritan took. This is the path that Jesus Himself took. He lowered Himself. He lived His entire human existence practicing the real, concrete language of love. Yes, tenderness is the path of choice for the strongest, most courageous men and women. Tenderness is not weakness, it is fortitude. It is the path of solidarity, the path of humility. Please allow me to say it loud and clear. The more powerful you are, the more your actions will have an impact on people. The more responsible you are to act humbly. If you don't, your power will ruin you and you will ruin the other. There's a saying in Argentina, power is like drinking gin on an empty stomach. You feel dizzy, you get drunk, you lose your balance, and you will end up hurting yourself and those around you if you don't connect your power with humility and tenderness. Through humility and concrete love, on the other hand, power, the highest, the strongest one, becomes a service, a force for good. The future of humankind isn't exclusively in the hands of politicians or great leaders of big companies. Yes, they do hold an enormous responsibility, but the future is, most of all, in the hands of those people who recognize the other as you and themselves as part of an us. We all need each other. And so please, think of me as well with tenderness, so I can fulfill the task I have been given for the good of the other, for each and every one of all of you and all of us. Thank you.